Welcome to Real Wake Up. I'm Dean Bell here with Dean Kevin, Ronald, and Pan Eagle, otherwise Peter. And today's movie is Multiplicity, 1996. Okay, storyline. Construction worker Doug Kinney finds that the pressures of his working life combined with his duties to his wife, Laura, and daughter, Jennifer G, leaves him with little time for himself. However, he is approached by geneticist Dr. Owen Leeds, who offers him a rather unusual solution to his problems, cloning. So this movie kind of makes fun and light of cloning, but as we all know, some of us know, cloning is actually going on. And again, Hollywood uses comedy to kind of just make light of what's really going on sometimes, and this is a great example. But it's a fun movie, and let's see what we can become more aware of through it. So I'll give it over to you, Kevin.
The movie Multiplicity would present us with the main character, Doug, played by Michael Keaton. He would be operating within then what is in reality a vast multi-dimensional computer game, amidst all other individuals who happen to be in this particular simulator, as there are endless simulators also, all designed for the overall purpose of recognizing the true reality from the comparison that the simulators and all that transpires within them afford, a recognizing of a true reality that is everything by the only effective means this can be so, by comparison with that which isn't everything, which is then encapsulated, contained parts of this everything, which are then these simulated creational realities. The isness, with its singular motivation for survival and continued recognition of itself, brings forth the means that this can be so. Parts of the isness become encapsulated within a simulated reality, within that which isn't this everything isness reality, real awareness units, that which are a part of the is, but have no recognition of it, that through the creational process of moving through the body forms, that, as is always the case, the real awareness becomes somewhat absorbed into the simulated illusions of creation, causing an awareness split to be so. The personal self-awareness comes into being. The personal self, with the consideration that what it is experiencing, what the body type happens to be, is what it is, and a personal self that is lost in the illusion of its creation, by virtue of maintaining the state of being that gave rise to it in the first place, that of the constant utilizing of the created vehicle's mechanics, the literal thought processes, as anything utilized through the created self, of which there are 5 vehicles, is a withdrawing of awareness from the only position that a standing with the is can be maintained, and this would be a beingness, nowness state of the real awareness, absent of anything created through the body vehicles, a nowness state that is in fact this everything isness. For the real awareness can be nothing other than the endless isness reality that it is, and a part of, a position where nothing is required other than just being what it is. And so nothing can be added to an endless everything, for everything would be already there. But should it be decided to create something, to experience something that is, as everything must be, part of this everything isness reality, to experience parts of an everything must have that part rather encapsulated, boxed in, and aside from the isness everything that allows then this part, this piece, to be experienced independently from the whole. And so, as these pieces, as these parts are decided through the ideas generated through the created self, they are rather contained and enclosed in simulated bubbles of experience that are viewable through the mechanics of the body vehicle that decode the pieces, the ideas decided upon, that would be as frequencies in their base form into the corresponding simulation that mirrors their nature, and the real awareness can only be what it is, in the ever nowness of its isness everything position. It will be deciding nothing, creating nothing, and so what creates these ideas, what decides to isolate pieces and experience them, would still be this real awareness, as everything is awareness, but by virtue of this activation of ideas, of a free will self-deciding, of being that which the real awareness isn't, which is just a forever nowness being state, this gives birth to a personal awareness. A personal awareness that is a part of the real awareness, but that which only is designed for the creation it manifests through its idea generating, and also the creation it perceives through the body vehicles, body vehicle apparatus that are designed to decode the pieces into simulation. The personal awareness can never perceive the ears it is in fact a part of, through the real awareness it actually is, because the personal self, or awareness, is that which activates and creates and utilizes the idea generating aspects of the body vehicles. The personal self is only designed for the simulation it generates and can decode into simulation. But when the time comes where a reconnection is made with the real awareness, so then are these two overall states available, the personal self-awareness and the creations of its ideas or with the mechanics of the body vehicles ceasing to be utilized, the mind and emotions, etc., a state aside from the personal self can be assumed, which, if it isn't the personal self, if it isn't the creating of ideas, the pieces, then it must be the nowness of the real awareness position, that is the everything isness state. And now we have our comparison overall. The two states of being the real awareness can switch between its personal awareness state with its ideas and illusions of encapsulated pieces, or the real awareness isness everything position, which is a standing in the everything the true reality life is. And the real awareness then can utilize its personal self-awareness and the simulated, encapsulated pieces of the whole experiences to recognize this absolute everything is reality. And with that achieved, the real awareness is not just the ear's ocean, but can recognize itself as a drop within the ear's ocean, recognize the ear's ocean it is a part of, and become as a unique light being within it. And as the real awareness is still a part of this isness, its recognition of the ears from its unique real light being perspective is recognition that becomes that which it is a part of. The ears, more so, recognizes itself. And with that as the overview, the real purpose of everything, if we return back into the simulators, back in with all the individuals who are at various stages of their processes through a creation, the vast majority, as is always the case, will still be operating from their personal self-positions. They will not have made the connection with the real awareness that they are, mainly because they are unaware of it. As always, it is a necessity to have individuals come into a creation and present the ears, make reference to the real awareness and this real purpose and opportunity of superseding the necessity for the simulators. And at this time it is Dwayne the great writer. But anyway, so for those yet to make their real awareness connections, we refer to these as being the unconscious, unaware, the personal self immersed, and indeed the one dimensionally focused. As the process of getting through a creation is an awareness journey that involves the recognizing of the multi-dimensional nature of ourselves and creation, as creation comprises of 5 life levels, each stemming from each of the 5 body vehicles, that through the unique aspects of each effect into these dimensional realms. But for those who are personal self-immersed, for them the physical level, the densest creational level, will be their focus, naturally so, as they have no awareness of anything else. Yet their awareness is through everything creational, and their 5 body vehicles are a part of the construction and maintenance of the design of the dimensions of creation. For this is the design of creation, that pieces can be experienced. The pieces experienced, all based on a decision as to the pieces, the ideas created and agreed to through the body vehicles. And any idea generated, be it thought, emotion, or imagination, the nature of these ideas are unique frequencies which are like files placed into a computer's database. The idea frequencies are installed in the consciousness, and the mechanics of the body vehicles then decode these frequencies created through them into a simulation that reflects their nature, like the database of decided files becoming decoded by the computer and then onto the screen as a computer game that is according to these files, these ideas, these decided frequency pieces. And really, it is just one overall body consciousness mechanic generating the ideas and then decoding them, all coalescing into a physical level experience, but at the same time, each of the 5 vehicles effecting life levels, other dimensions also, the emotions into the astral level, the thoughts into the mental level, the imagination into the ethereal. And these ideas then formulate the life levels, as they are maintained, as they are agreed upon. For as much as we create our own ideas that then effect simulation, we can agree with the ideas of others. And if we agree with another idea, another unique frequency piece, it is as though we had decided on it ourselves, and it becomes our experience effected also. And naturally, if 2 individuals have a unique frequency idea shared that they both agree with, they must experience the same effect, a shared, simulated experience. And so the consciousness of each builds up with its decided, filed ideas, a consciousness that is interconnected with all others, as all consciousness affects the overall simulator, and so it must be then overall a simulator shared. All consciousness then comprises of these ideas that have built up, and as is the nature of creation, any idea agreed to, we will be the effects of its nature, be it our own created idea or that of another. And so, if I have an idea that generates a simulated effect, and another agrees to that idea, that they also experience this effect, it is an effect experience shared. but it also is an effect based on an idea that stemmed from the aspects of my consciousness. You can't have an idea or the effect of the idea without that which generated it. You can't have a computer game without that which creates it, the computer with its files, its consciousness, that has effected it into a being. And so, if another agrees with an idea I create, then they agree with that which created it, my consciousness of ideas. For naturally, if I create an idea and the corresponding effect I then experience, my consciousness is tied to the effecting of it. My personal self-awareness features in that which I have created. If another agrees with the idea I created, they feature in the effects of which feature my personal self, because my personal self-consciousness generated the idea and then decodes it into a simulation that my personal self experiences. You can't have the idea without that which created it. You agree with an idea, you agree with the individual that created it, you agree then with their consciousness. And as their consciousness comprises of all the decided ideas that it will, then you also are agreeing with all these ideas, as you agree with the consciousness by default, as you agree with the idea that stemmed from that consciousness, and every idea of that consciousness you then are uploading to your own, and will experience the effects. This is how an idea may appear one way on the surface, but that which is the consciousness construction of the individual who presented it, as personality, attitude, inclination, and agenda, are all as ideas also that comprise a consciousness. And so we can rather take on more than we realized. We can let monsters into our experience that are posing as a door salesman, so to speak. And so, as moments go by, as ideas are created, as ideas are agreed to, so does the simulation become as it is overall, according to these created ideas and the agreements. For of course, if two individuals share an idea agreed upon, they share the same simulation, and this mechanic has then simulated shared collective experiences within the overall shared simulated stadium that ranges from families to friends to countries to planets to star systems. And with shared experience, so do we have our agreement attachments with those who are a part in the effecting of these shared simulation of collective experiences within the simulator. We forge our associations and friendships, which ensure we always will encounter these individuals across lifetimes. As the consciousness builds upon itself and all the ideas it contains, all the agreements and attachments to others, or the created ideas that are the body types of others in actuality, as to experience what we do in creation, it is always the ideas we agree with, and in regards to others then, it is their consciousness. And all this then has everyone's simulation playing out accordingly. And we can see that everything we experience in creation is based on our decision. We decide our ideas, or we decide on those created by others. We decide all who take a part in our experience through the ideas they created that we have agreed with, and we decide our immediate collective groups of constant actors in our movie as we make our direct attachments with their consciousnesses. And as lifetimes go by, as each new lifetime we have a new memory body vehicle, we have then no conscious recollection of anything we had decided and agreed upon prior to our current lifetime. But the consciousness and how it has been constructed with its idea files remains, and is steadily built upon from the moment we had our first ever simulated embodiment, and unconscious we may be of what it contains prior to our current lifetime, that which then is the subconscious, it still generates the experiences according to the ideas it contains, and the design of which overall must be experience exactly as we have decided it. The effects equal the causes. The ideas we decide and agree to.
Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah, I'll try to stab at this. I think Kevin did a really good job on that one. That sort of reminds me when I was reading the Tiger's Fang, that experience that Paul was having. I got the impression that I was having the same experience as he was having as I was reading the book. And I think that's what he's pertaining to. Yeah, I was talking about reading the Tiger's Fang. That sort of blends into what you were saying. You become the book. You adopt their thinking, and it sort of blends into what you were talking about. That's what I think. It sort of mirrors the book 2, video 4, when Kevin talks about not Kevin, but Dwayne talks about going through the different levels of heavens. It's sort of about the same thing. It's about the same experiences.
I was going to try and get a little more light here in this camera view, but we'll work from the darkness.
Well, you're like me, you're outdoors.
Yep, absolutely. Yours is simulated outdoors. Mine is real.
Hey, you caught me.
Or mine's a simulation. Yours is the real one.
Yeah.
But that's it, like the Tiger's Fang or any writing where it has a journey of going through many bodies, through many levels. actually through the entire scope of levels that Paul Twitchell had been writing on, and or discovering and presenting. So I think The Talons of Time is another one that's maybe a little bit more closer to this type of experience. We notice this because our experience is naturally multiple bodies and multiple time frames. And we just watched a movie called it had an odd title, something about timescapes, but it's a new movie about a guy who they live in a situation where some people, the very rich only, like Bezos going up to taking a trip to space, these people can go back in time and have an experience in any spot in the past that they wish to, any time frame. And the guy's in relationships and he loses, they have these waves that pass over and they're time shifts. And it's like a traumatic experience sometimes. If it's a very heavy wave, the hero has a very traumatic experience and loses his love. And so the whole movie is all about his relationships and changes that may or may not be made in the past and how we can affect creating something that we want to have in the reality that we're in here. And so The Talons of Time, also Paul Twitchell book, was somewhat on that topic. But I'm going to bypass any more explanation there to go to the ideas that Kevin was sharing about the real awareness, and becoming or working our way through the creation, which was the themes of the Talons of Time and Tiger's Fang, actually. The recognition, and especially in the sci-fi stories of Paul Twitchell, like Talons of Time, he's talking about recognizing the simulation. Even though he doesn't use those terms, his books are dynamic. There's another one where, shoot, okay, I forgot the title on that, where he's taking his lover through the astral mental plane areas and where the Kalam God is, and she's kind of acting like what I call the Kali, which is the feminine influence. Go ahead.
East of Danger, was it?
No, that's not the one. It's the one with the woman.
Remasked of Gaba?
Gaba, Remasked of Gaba, exactly. I liked it a lot. And she's got these three parts to herself, we'll say: her real self, her simulated self, and her physical self. She's not really knowing what she's doing. And at the same time, she's going through the journey with the Paul Twitchell character. And it's kind of exciting, tension-packed drama in that sense about, are they or are they not? Is he going to succumb to his love for her in order to become, in other words, slip back into the old, or is he going to actually also become his real beingness, isness, and not, again, go back to the simulated self or selves? So it's a good demonstration here of a similarity with what the Michael Keaton character is playing with in terms of his simulated robotic, or what are they, android clones? Yes. And then he has to educate them, or vice versa. And that's kind of the context of the movie. How well is he really finding his own? Not too much to do with his counterparts, but I will say, because I think the counterparts are going to get thrown out, I guess, at the end, and no longer needed. Something like finding your real self and no longer needing the astral, the mental body, etc. So that was my first take on this movie. I had one more aspect about the different characters that these actors in the movie played, and or the movies that they were part of, which are interesting in this regard. There's Beetlejuice in particular, the one that Michael Keaton plays, and he's also become quite popular currently, by the way, and he's in this I'll go back to this in the next part, but I would like to say that this newest movie he's in is called Dope Sick. And in Dope Sick, all of the characters are on oxycodone and or Oxycontin. And it's he's a doctor, and he's totally addicted. And he's also going to play the character who's going to reveal what the drug companies and Pfizer have actually done. They need an actual person who is in the position to know how they were sold on the Oxycontin as being an opioid that was non-addictive or semi-addictive. And in fact, it's grossly abused, but not only that, it's misrepresented so thoroughly that a huge number of populated people in the United States and other countries addicted and to the painkiller, but actually to the drug, and not many not being in pain, while many others in pain and now multiple pains. And so the multiplicity factor of how they sell this in the simulation is very important for us to realize and be aware of, because they do this in all the media forms, not just with drugs. They do it with medicine, foods, etc. So there you go.
Thanks, Peter. And in the beginning, Kevin, you mentioned the you can tell something's real by what's not real. That idea that we use a lot. Well, here in the movie, Doug had a chance. He sees it wasn't working with his job. And by the way, construction, he wasn't even the boss, the owner of a construction company, but Dwayne's told me about how these people in the construction business are totally engrossed in their jobs. So it's very real how family comes last, basically. The construction company is hectic. Doug was just a foreman, I think. So he wasn't even the owner, but it's very busy life. So yes, he had pressures, a lot of pressures, no time for himself. So he could have recognized what, wasn't working, what not to do. So life always gives you a chance or a hint. So here comes Laura, his wife, with an opportunity for a job. What was it, real estate or something? So he could have, backed off, either backed off or started his own little company like Dwayne did. And worked as much, or little as he wanted to. He could have taken side jobs, or like Dwayne did, he worked with patio covers. He had a specialty. He worked patio covers. He'd get off at 2:00 every day, hire one helper or two helpers. He had a really focused and efficient business where he was in construction, but he had time for himself. So here Laura comes in with the hints. Is life giving you hints all the time, giving you opportunities to do something different? If it doesn't work, do something else. And so again, here's an opportunity, or here's an example of how you see it through what doesn't work or what isn't real. And I'm just thinking of fact checkers here. They're the ones that are supposedly on the internet telling you what's not real. So you have something, a statement, and they're telling you what's not real. Of course, they're setting you up so that, because they're implying what is real is what they're telling you. So you have to be in that state of recognition, really, rather than using science, information, or knowledge to see through creation here. But this is a very interesting movie. It has a lot of good parts to it that we can discuss. So go ahead, Kevin.
And so Doug rather finds himself in rather a stressful position, overworked, juggling with commitments, family, etc. And indeed, these were everything he would have consciously chosen for himself in this lifetime. But the circumstances by which these choices became available would have stemmed from the ideas already installed in the consciousness that map out lifetimes accordingly. Where he found himself positioned, his country, etc., all predetermined, based on however his consciousness is constructed, and those he would encounter that would become his friends, his associates, his wife, his children, all pre-planted idea agreements and attachments that ensure generally the same individuals that these attachments are extended to will always feature in our experiences lifetime to a lifetime. And although consciously unrealized, subconscious familiarity will have them re-embraced again and maintained as friends, potential wives, or husbands, as all collective groups will assume various roles and positions in relation to each other each lifetime around. A friend from a previous lifetime may take the role of a daughter in the current one, etc. And even the jobs and careers we assume tend to be mapped out potentially as that which we tend to lean toward based on our general routines of that which we are drawn to, expressing in whatever form they might each lifetime around. And of course, as much as a lifetime already is rather mapped out potentially by our decided hand through our consciousness, we also will be constantly deciding, creating, and agreeing on still further ideas during the current lifetime, which, as every idea will, generate the effects that mirror their nature. And if the current lifetime concludes, so the consciousness as it stands, and all the new lifetime of ideas we have added to it, will be projecting once again into the next lifetime, as we maintain agreement overall with the consciousness, as all will as they think the consciousness, the personal self, is what they are, and only until they become aware of other options, the dimensions of creation, and the real universes of the ears, will they afford themselves more experiential options, as they no longer decide quite so adamantly that they are their constructed consciousness, and so that is all they can experience. A consciousness that is very much cemented and locked into only physical, astral focus and consideration, and so rarely will any experiential exploration extend beyond these positions in creation, and so Doug is the effects of himself, and just as thought ideas project the corresponding experience, so do emotions. Emotions are created as any other idea, and it is we that decide an emotional reaction in response to situations we find ourselves in, and the situations we find ourselves in are what we have decided to experience through the agreements we have made in the consciousness. So we have made the movie, and now we are emotionally reacting to our creation in whatever way we are, and the emotion will always effect in some way that which mirrors its nature also. Angry people effect that which expresses as volatile situations, for example, as our experience is always as we decide it. So if Doug has found himself in a stressful situation, it is a situation of his own making, and certain ideas he has created, certain emotions he has decided upon, have moulded the consciousness in such a way that his current lifetime of work and family is stressful, and yet a few idea adjustments here and there, a few emotional alterations, and he could have had the same overall experience, but absent of the stress, absent of being in an overworked and unmanageable situation. For how many times do we see individuals working the same exact job, but one is calmly going about it, and the other is finding it stressful and applying the additional emotion in response? And so, for the calm individual, even though he or she is in the exact same job as the stressed one, the ideas that brought both into this shared situation were agreed to and the same, but now one is applying additional emotional ideas, and this then must affect experience, where their circumstances must gradually diverge according to the ideas each are additionally deciding on, as experience always is effected from the ideas we generate, and then it is likely that as we embrace stress, rage, emotion of this type, the experiences we have will always be based on these emotions. And we might expect then that regardless of the experiences between these two work colleagues, their general decided way of being, emotionally speaking, will always have them in situations that reflect this. And we may find ourselves in jobs then, maybe in future lifetimes, say, where we have projected for ourselves such circumstances as Doug, where he is in a stressful situation that on the surface may appear as though he couldn't have possibly chosen that for himself, but in fact he did, all based on his consciousness and what emotion and attitudes he tends lean toward routinely. And yet there could be another who has exactly the same or similar situation as a Doug, but everything seems to work, to flow smoothly, as that individual very likely then hadn't applied additional attitudes and emotions that ensured these exact same or similar circumstances are not stressful as Doug's happen to be. But again, according to how we have constructed our consciousness, yes, we might find ourselves in unsavory situations, but have we also built a personality, built a consciousness that is along the lines of one that, although finding ourselves in difficult and unmanageable experiences, that we always are inclined toward finding solutions? Or are we one that just accepts our miserable situation and continues on with it? For again, opportunities to extricate ourselves from situations we have created for ourselves, like anything we experience, are opportunities we have afforded for ourselves according to our consciousness construction. And even if opportunity does come the way of the individual with a consciousness that is one that is disinclined toward solutions to problems, it's very likely they won't see the opportunities available, so closed off with their decided attitudes that they are. And so, although Doug evidently is one where his particular consciousness construction always must seemingly generate experiences that are stressful, it is also a consciousness clearly open to always finding solutions to his stressful creations, and thus opportunity is afforded accordingly. And if opportunity isn't in the form of something already created by another, then would it fall on Doug to possibly create his own opportunities? Again, only if he had the sort of a consciousness based on such creative inclinations. And here, then, his opportunity would come in the form of cloning himself, that his workload be shared and lessened, a seemingly by chance approach by a scientist. But nothing is by chance, and always by design. As our consciousness is constructed with the ideas we decide and agree with, and with its agreement associations with others, we are constantly in a state of potentiality of experience according to our consciousness design, and as it pertains also to those we have agreements and attachments with. We rather make contracts with each other, unseen from the one-dimensional personal view, based on what we agree and decide, as though building a movie with others, and how it will unfold, the roles we each will play, our scripts, etc. Doug then, ultimately, and in reality, decided the potentiality that he would have an opportunity to be cloned, based on the agreement with another who had decided his own experience along scientific cloning lines, and to agree to feature in Doug's experience and play the role of the accommodating scientist. And the simulated experience plays out as it does, a potentiality for it, but always with free will involved, that can have decision be made that Doug's cloning experience may never have been so. All it would have taken would be for Doug to refuse the offered help, for example, although generally there will be that intuitive nudge to proceed with it, regardless of whatever the experience would unfold as. Because with anything agreed upon, with everything as it already must be, already decided and installed in the consciousness, there is a familiarity there then with all that effects from already decided upon and installed ideas. The physical level, based on its cause and effect nature, based on its decided design that incorporates distance and time, so these ideas that in actuality are instantly so, the consciousness is in reality the instant effect of itself now, our lifetimes, our complete stay in the simulator is already over and complete in actuality, but on the physical it is more a gradual procession of consciousness causes to the effects generated through it, but effects that are already so in reality, effects that we already are experiencing on other dimensional levels of ourselves, and through the real awareness we actually are. And so, as we walk through the various stages of a physical level simulation according to our decided consciousness, on levels of our multi-dimensional being and real awareness, must these stages, these steps, these individuals seem familiar, seem to attract our decision to agree with them, as in reality everything according to our consciousness is in effect now. It's just the physical level rollout takes the decided and agreed to time phases it does to catch up with itself. A little like as we play a movie, we watch it from beginning to end, but the movie in its entirety already is on the disc. The movie is already complete, but the personal self goes through the simulated stages of it from beginning to end.
It's, yeah, like you said, Doug is effective himself. Harold Ramis directed this one, just like the other movie we reviewed, Groundhog Day, kind of similar, where Bill Murray relives his day over and over again, and here Michael Keaton relives himself over and over, you could say, through the clones. So this is, somewhat purposely done by the directors or the makers to kind of to confirm, how it is here in creation. It's kind of, we just go over and over, keep recycling back and forth, day by day, body type by body type. They're kind of subliminally reinforcing this, and like you say, by through the same old ideas that we're familiar with. We're not introducing any new ideas, you could say, to get you out of your routine. And going back to that routine here, we just burned a bunch of books last night. Yeah, we're book burners. You're talking about talons of time, Peter, and yeah, this Iranian, she had an experience with the real guides. They were all standing in front of her, real clear. I think she's the one that she drew pictures of them, or else she had someone else was drawing pictures of them, but she had an experience with them, whether they were the real guides or not. Again, it was kind of taking her back to the old days, and everything's new now. So that's why we burn the books, even though they're great books at the time, Eckankar books, Talons of Time, some of the other ones, like you mentioned, Three Masks of Gaba, Far Country, Dialogues with the Master. Burned them all, No more references from the old days. The references are new now. We got to keep up with things and keep up with the new, try to figure out the new references and how they fit into our life and how we relate to the new references. So again, there's nothing bad or negated from the old days or the old ideas, but it's just to really get this, you have to redo your resume or to update it all the time, you could say. You have to keep up with life, because it's always new now. It's never old. It was never old, like Dwayne says. Life was never old. It was never old. It was always new. It's always new now. So to get that through to the literal mind is hard for people, because they want to always go back to the personal self. And this movie too, it kind of reinforces that personal self, the clones are the personal self, and he keeps referring to himself, and he never gets beyond that idea. He finally lets go, and they all have their experiences, because once they keep having their experiences, they'll kind of veer off and have their own life, and they won't be kind of his clone anymore. They'll be, who they are. Through their experiences, they create their own being, personality.
Well, when Paul Switzer wrote his books, he says, read them, but don't linger there.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
And I think that's what he's saying. He says, you pick up that experience and you move on to the next experience. So that old and drag you back in. I'd like to talk a little bit about the psychology of these clones. I want to know where their souls come from. Are they new souls, or do they have a souls at all? I mean, how do you justify like Hillary Clinton's supposed to have 3 or 4 clones? I've seen some that claim were clones, but I don't know if they're really clones. Maybe they were just lookalikes, but not really clones. Too bad we don't have more scientific information about clones.
Paul said that once he could run, or he was running, or people can run more than one body. So what does that mean? Does that mean he's actually running it, or is there another entity in there? Apparently that there are, from my understanding, yeah, there are different souls in these clones.
Well, YouTube had a lot of those movies on about people who witnessed the clones. And they said they were taking a lot of these actors and actresses and they were cloning them. And they were doing all kinds of weird things to them. So there's quite a bit of information out there, but now it's being held back. Maybe someday it'll come out.
The one is the paradoxical situation of book burners and using these old references, and at the same time we're here with the Ghostbusters and the Groundhog and Beetlejuice and Multiplicity, and those would be as well. So whether it matters, whatever, burning or not the old actual materials, what's of course the idea of not needing to reference or use the old references, spirit, soul, God, etc. And one of that reminds me of is the soul's idea. And I think that actually there really isn't any personal individuality per se, and that idea that there has to be one soul for one body, as an example, or is also breakable. And if you're mentioning that Kevin had multiple lifetimes, I think I was the Indian shaman chief, and at the same time I was I also think I was a famous writer person who also had experiences of being abandoned on the beach and or he had some experience related to that which became part of the books that he wrote. And so I'm experiencing this kind of simulated duplicity in my own life, but I think I just wanted to point out about these different body existences as an example. Even in our physical, as an actor, Michael Keaton is taking on 4 or 5 different roles of importance or prominence of late or in his career, and including he also did Mr. Mom, and in the Beetlejuice he was playing that walk-in character, I guess we'd say, into the ghost or demon personality that he was, and it may not be the right terms. It doesn't really matter. Just the usual horror situation where either the body or the self is being controlled or acting as a controller of others, and creating situations and playing with the abuse and domination and manipulation and monopolization in all kinds of different ways. So this is the situation of the multiplicity idea, I think, here. And I was going to express that with the Bill Murray character, who also in Saturday Night Live, he had this little puppet called Mr. Bill. And Mr. Bill used to get abused and smashed and crushed and all kinds of, little tiny guy, puppet. And it was funny. They just did these little, 2-minute snippets with Mr. Bill. But there he is, Bill Murray's playing here, the Ghostbusters. And then also he's with Andie MacDowell, who is the wife in here in Multiplicity. And her character may not be too important, but I think it's interesting she was in both movies, the Groundhog Day and here, Multiplicity. And so she's also experiencing the simulator effect. And as actors, I think this is a very acute experience for them, because they are playing roles that may or may not be actually in their experience. However, they are having some form of that experience. And who knows, maybe Michael Keaton, when he was playing the actor of the doctor addicted to oxycodone, has actually had some personal experience with the painkiller. I'll also point out the deaths of people like Prince and Tom Petty, and to some extent Jimi Hendrix, but John Lennon, Elvis, all of them were taking drugs, painkillers, prescribed, except for Jimi Hendrix. That was a different situation. And some of them were doing the suicidal or suicide avoidance situation. And I know either that or they have people that they know that were close to them that they've lost, as have I, due to accidental overdose. But of course, I just met a young man across the street. He was doing something with my car, and he's only 17, but he is studying martial arts. And we talked about that because it relates to his experience of wanting to be a MMA, which is a mixed martial artist. And he said, I am a mixed martial artist, even though he's learning, and I assumed that he was just learning, but this is how it is. It's an ongoing learning of our relationship with the simulator and how we're wanting to work beyond it. So I just will finish with on this part with the John Belushi, who's friends with Bill Murray, very good friends with Bill Murray and the Saturday Night Live people, and Michael Keaton, and he of course died of the drug overdose as well. So these issues, which are the social cultural issues, I think that we're covering in that sense, or relationship, is a dynamic that provides this awareness and or at least tools of meeting these parts of ourselves. So I'm also experiencing that, and that's a much larger story, I would suppose, to say here. The only one I want to say is the one that I most recently picked up on, which is being the Joseph of Arimathea character, who was the one who buried Jesus, the rich man, and him and Nicodemus. And in that experience, I realized that what he did was I think the reality was removing the body from the tomb before they found it, when they uncovered the tomb and made it look like Jesus' body had resurrected and disappeared. And I think that Joseph was a merchant, and I was, and went to England and started the whole Church of England Glastonbury thing in Camelot with the Arthur's Knights and all of that stuff, which followed, and all of those stories and issues there that are part of something that I'm learning now to put together in a whole nother framework, which I'm wondering about, which is the creation of things that are beyond the simulated ideas that now exist. That is, they might be real ideas in existence that time actually doesn't, there is no time per se, there's only now. And all the events, past, present, future, are here now. So there is no soul going from body to body. It's a wholeness that's with that, and yes, with the individuals, and the recognition of that isness within each individual. I'm not digressing, but I'm definitely not exactly connecting the dots. But I think this is part of the multiplicity theme of the movie, of becoming aware of our five bodies or our wholeness and our real position. And so that is connected, you know. I'm kind of shaken a little bit talking about it, but partially it's because it rained here for about 40 hours straight last 2 days, and it's still a little cool, and I'm in the shade and so forth. And living in Florida, you have that experience where your blood sugar or your blood thins out quite a bit after a while living down in the southern states, you know. I don't know if you've experienced that, Val, but you know, any difference where you are as opposed to where you were before. But in any case, this is, you know, how we do. We compare these things and use the references. Now I'm using the new references and don't know if I'm heading down the rabbit hole or I'm actually getting the whole vibrational wholeness and the isness or whatever within myself. You know, it's coming to a wholeness that really makes sense. So I do feel a lot of that, and that's how I'm relating this Michael Keaton character.
And so, really, when it comes to time constraints, consciousness has decided, in regards to the mechanics of the physical level it affects, that certain things take certain amounts of time to achieve. In reality, everything is instantly what it is, and this could just as readily have been the case through a consciousness that affects the physical level, that agreements be such, that instant manifesting of anything be so. But instead of an instant house, it has been decided that it requires materials, it requires labour, all the various decided laws of physics that comprise its building, and decided also that it takes a certain amount of decided to time, and so anything that presents as limitation, anything that is anything other than our ideas being instantly their effects, is that which has been decided and agreed upon also through the consciousness. We have rather enslaved ourselves to the clock, to time, or in reality have rather agreed to this limitation through those that control us and the simulation. Keep all the slaves busy, with less and less time to ponder, consider, and explore more than their ever increasing one-dimensional workload, and with the agreements to the limitations of time and physical level mechanics applied, that make it so that that which could have been instantly so now takes the illusion of decided time to achieve. Real awareness is this overall awareness that is everything, that is this isness everything, that through the creational process results in unique, real light, real awareness beings in recognition of the is, but still a part of all real awareness and the isness. This real awareness is through all created consciousness then. It is effectively the same real awareness animating it all, though with the personal self-awareness established, with the disconnect from this overall everything real awareness. Do the personal self-awarenesses think their personal self-consciousness construction, and the simulation, and the body types effected from it is what they are? The consciousness just really an overall vehicle, a mouldable mechanic, that a personal awareness is within, and experiences then that which it has decided through its consciousness vehicle. And so, if we clone an individual, what is it we are actually doing? We are not cloning that which animates it, the personal awareness, which is really the real awareness, though which hasn't perhaps established recognition yet that this is so. We are cloning then the mechanics, the body vehicle, and the body vehicle is the sum of its consciousness, as it is the consciousness that, based on its construction, effects the body vehicles into a being, and the body vehicles that then decodes the consciousness into a simulation. The consciousness is like a virtual reality headset containing the overall game, and the awareness rather puts on the headset and experiences through the headset's decoding mechanics the consciousness construct it contains, including the body form we now are encased within. And so effectively the cloning duplicates the mechanics, the consciousness. It makes a second virtual reality headset of the same game. A consciousness comprises of all the memories, the experiences of all the lifetimes, as every lifetime is stored as reference files within it. And as I mentioned earlier, as we have a new body-mind each lifetime around, all that was experienced is rather transferred to storage areas of the created self, the Akashic causal mind area, and this area generally isn't accessible unless we explore more so than just the one-dimensional and astral parts of ourselves. We can unlock the causal Akashic areas and access past lifetimes, and especially as we reconnect with the real awareness that we actually are, that a real awareness that is through all consciousness and all the 5 bodies of it, can facilitate full creational access, including past lifetimes, if we so wish. And so, were we to clone an individual, and that they are exactly as the original individual is in regards to memory, personality, etc., then we must have replicated the consciousness of all the ideas it contains, for the individual would be the culmination of its consciousness, every idea ever installed in it, that makes them what they are now, including the body vehicle the consciousness as it comprises of has currently effected into. As every idea is a unique frequency, then a consciousness must comprise of a bundle, a package of unique frequencies, all the frequencies that were the ideas, the thoughts, emotions created through the body vehicles. The consciousness would include then personality, attitudes, etc., for anything that isn't this isness everything is that which is created, which is an encapsulated idea that affects encapsulated experiences, and personality and attitudes are as created as anything else, and become the consciousness design, and add to the effect the overall consciousness produces as a simulation. And so, utilizing technology, can a consciousness be determined as to its unique frequencies that make it up? These frequencies can be duplicated, and you have effectively then another consciousness vehicle that is not only identical body form wise, but personality, attitude wise also, with all the memories also installed, which also are unique frequencies according to the idea memories that they are. But like all mechanics, all virtual reality headsets, the consciousness vehicle is there, the game character that also is affected from the consciousness is ready, including the mannerisms, the attitudes, the personality we have decided and created our character to be, all as files in the consciousness, in the virtual reality headset. Then the real awareness is placed within the consciousness, puts on the headset, and experiences the simulation that the mechanics of the headset that contains the consciousness decodes. But with a personal self, it thinks what it has created as a consciousness vehicle is what it is, and it is its own reality, but it isn't real, as anything created through the body, vehicles, thought, emotion, personality, attitudes, etc., are simulated. We all are multi-dimensional. We all are simultaneously viewing through every idea vehicle in creation. We are all this one real awareness isness. But regardless of the extent to which we recognize this, or that we stand in the nowness of our real awareness, and can potentially then be accessing through everything creational, while on the physical level we are limited to the containment that the physical body affords. We only can view the simulation generally from this one position, because the personal self really is just the consciousness. It is something created, and although we are multi-dimensional, we tend to have a singular view while on the physical. But if a consciousness is cloned, it is effectively the same idea construction then as what it was cloned from. It will be then the same personal self. And so we might say the clone is our personal self now duplicated, and yet from a bigger overview we can say that all personal selves are that which we are, as this same real awareness, this one awareness, animates through them all. The only difference between the personal self of another and a personal self, a consciousness that has been duplicated, is that where one would be different, the clone is exactly the same, as it must be if a consciousness of ideas was replicated. And yet, if we were cloned, our awareness would still be housed in the virtual reality headset of our own created consciousness vehicle, and to the personal self's perspective, the clone, although identical, would be no more a part of us than any other individual. But then the bigger overview would still be that we are connected to the clone, just as we would be connected to all consciousness vehicles through the overall real awareness that in reality animates them all. And we saw in the film how, yes, the clones were exactly as the original was in regards to memory up until the point of their creation, as all contained the same consciousness idea files, but as each began to have their own diverging experiences, these experiences were not automatically known to each clone, as now these would be additional ideas they were creating and effecting into experience that would be filing into their respective memory vehicles on top of the consciousness of experience references that were exactly the same up until the moment the clones began to make their individual choices. So, in the movie, we had 4 clones, 4 virtual reality headsets that were identical with the consciousness they contained, but then The personal self-awarenesses wearing them would be making their individual choices within the identical games and avatars they assumed. The 4 identical games no longer would remain so, and the experiences collated through the memory vehicles of each only can be known to the user, the one whose virtual reality headset it belonged to. There can be instances where when clones are created that there is an intrinsic link between the two, that even though two now completely separate from a creational perspective view, personal selves, that the ideas installed within one can become known to the other, a kind of hive consciousness, and this can be so with identical twins, etc. also. This is something that is developed within certain species too, that the thoughts, the ideas of each individual are known to all, a hive mind collective, such as the reptilians have, for example. Or with a technological application, if all consciousness is linked to the technology, so can ideas be implanted into the consciousness through this technology. And so, what accounts for hive mind situations, and if this does apply to certain cloning, this is additional agreement that is installed as ideas into the consciousness of all involved. As always, consciousness and the agreements to the ideas it contains affects the reflecting experience. And so species develop along these lines because overall the species agrees that this is so. If a species gets locked into a technology that controls and utilizes their body vehicle idea generating mechanics, absent of the individual's free will choices, again, this is due to agreement. A slave species has in its overall consciousness agreement to being controlled by others, and this then always affects controlling circumstances for the slaves that can as readily become control through technological means of their every thought and emotion as any other controlling mechanism, again all according to what has been decided and agreed upon by all involved. And the clones, if linked in such a way that ideas agreed by one become those experienced also by the other, then this likewise must be through agreement that this be so, either conscious or unconscious agreement. A human slave in subconscious agreement to being controlled can find themselves in all manner of situations that stem from this agreement. They could well become cloned and controlled then through the clone, just as another expression of all the potentialities that agreement to control can result in. And as I said, all personal created selves are individualized and limited to their respective consciousness affecting simulation views, and so unless there is additional agreement that does interlink clones. Really then, these are as much individualized personal created selves as any other, and with the overall real awareness animating through them all, that when connected with, so can the personal self be shown unlimited views through all consciousness vehicles throughout the simulator, and so very likely could be shown a view through a clone, if indeed we were cloned, but really it would be no different to any other consciousness vehicle we were able to view through. And cloning is very real. It does take place. The technology exists, and it is very much utilized by the controllers for all the various reasons that they do, and the personal awareness can be transferred from one consciousness vehicle to another by technological means, but with a personal self always thinking it is that which it has created for itself, or that which it is displaced into. As it takes on the consciousness of another, it is placed or moved to. All it has available is that which the consciousness vehicle contains, its memories, etc. Like two different computer games with avatars in each with their individual created consciousness, which is just created mechanics, but mechanics that the personal self thinks are what it is. And so, should the personal awareness be moved from one game character and game, then to the other, it can have no memory of the previous game and character, because all the memories of that prior character are retained only in the consciousness of it, a consciousness it no longer is housed within, and therefore has no access to. Only through the real awareness can realization of such personal self-displacement be made available, as the personal self always is what its consciousness happens to be, and if it was constructed by its own choices, or by others, or if it finds itself placed in a completely different consciousness, it won't know the difference. It will just think it is whatever consciousness it happens to be in, just as were the human race robotized, and its every thought fed to it through technology. To the personal self, it would not be able to determine the difference between the thoughts it creates itself, that are then its consciousness, or those inputted through technology. The personal immersed self is just always that which its consciousness is, and that which is activated through the body vehicles, the ideas created. And it does seem that as clones are created, as it was in the movie, that every subsequent clone created seems to have defects and faults, as though the technology is there to create clones, but a technology not refined enough to ensure every clone is as identical, consciousness-wise, as the first. And so, it must be some fault with the technology that the idea frequency package of the consciousness is not precisely copied. And if the consciousness is in any way different, that which effects from it must be also. The body forms, the personality, the attitudes, etc. There are all manner of applications with this technology, and any consciousness can be cloned, and what personal self is placed within it, although will take on the consideration that the consciousness is what it thinks it is, such clones can still be controlled if agreements are in place that they can be motivated, manipulated to carry out certain activities. On the real side, many times encounters with cloned Dwaynes and guides can be so, and these clones will be manipulated and managed by generally the dark forces who have created them to cause disruption, place doubt and derision among those becoming more aware, etc., in an effort to put these individuals off from their process of awareness. And naturally then, these cloned Dwaynes may be very convincing, for they would have all the memories, etc., of the original Dwayne, and indeed, very likely, may think that they are Dwayne, but they would only be that which Dwayne's consciousness is. They wouldn't be the real awareness and is recognized being that animates through Dwayne's vehicle, and this would be then rather apparent. That cloned Dwaynes might be able to recite is references, as they have the replicated consciousness of memory ideas to refer to, but they wouldn't have the recognition of that which they speak of. And it's one thing to be able to regurgitate information, but if you don't understand or recognize that which you are speaking about, a little probing and questioning of the clone in regards to the references they speak of will make this rather apparent. And at whatever point they cloned Dwayne, all the clone would know was what the consciousness was at the moment the clone was made. Anything experience-wise the genuine Dwayne is going through beyond that point, the clone would be oblivious of.
This is very important part here about this multiplicity of, or actually the polarity of communications that occurs when you try and get a hold of somebody or get them to become integrated with or become a participant at some level with our group or your group, and or request to get an interview, and because they're always in their own references or their own group proviso, and then this they have really effectively almost eliminated this cross communication which should exist between receiver and supplier, so to speak. And this is a real key of how they work the computer corporation network. It's all one way for the most part. With you watch the movie and you see the show and you get the idea, and there's no place to act with it or to coordinate other than say, oh, I like this, I didn't like it, or I'd like to do something with it, but you have to buy in order to participate with that. So that's that's the whole, almost the entire condition that we're talking about. And I guess if we look at the movie Multiplicity, they had two different clones. And he had to do his cross communications with them. Pretty much, I guess it's from his point of view, what he wants to see happen. That is the Michael Keaton hero. And so, same issue, really. In this case, though, he's got pliable, I would say, clones willing to. Would you say that? That would be a question. Were they willing to be participants in however he wanted them to do, or were they argumentative? And I know there was some forms of argument, but just in general, what would be your apprehension on that one?
Well, they had their own view of things. In the original, Doug, I mean, he wanted a certain way, but then they got to be where they had their own experiences and they saw things their way. Like when the first original went to work and, did some things that, was creative with what his abilities were at that time, where the original, maybe disagreed. And then it got more and more so where the clones were more, had their own intent, their own way of doing things. So there were some problems. In the end, finally, they all went to Vegas, all the clones, just to give you a spoiler. They took a car and they all went to Vegas, start a new life.
They live a life as gamblers.
Yeah. What happened? Let's see. One became, you guys, maybe Kevin knows. I saw it a while back too. What the dodo bird, he became like a pizza deliverer and something, and maybe Kevin knows what each of them ended up as.
They all went to Las Vegas, and all three of them opened up a pizza chain together. They were working together for the same company. So
What's interesting, yeah, when we infiltrate, we're just giving people the opportunity. It's a creative way we got to use to get into their groups, but then we're not trying to change their mind or anything. We're just trying to give them opportunities where else we couldn't, outside of their group, because we're using their references to get to them. And that's the creative part, but we're certainly not trying to change their mind, but there is just give them the opportunity in their own ballpark, so to speak, using their references to see if they want to see more than what they have agreed to. Sheriff Mack has a great potential because he sees a lot and he's open. He's had a few experiences he shared where I told you this once, I think, where he was a sheriff. He stopped a lady from, she ran a red light and he saw all these kids in her car and she's all stressed out. She showed him her license registration, didn't even look at him, said, okay, just give me my ticket. I'm too stressed out. And he had a moment there where, this doesn't make sense. What am I doing? Writing tickets. I can see this lady's stressed out. So from there, he kind of got, what is my job really about? He started getting into the Constitution and seeing really what his job potential was, rather than just collecting revenue for the county there.
That's what happens when free will gets involved. And I think that happens with these clones too, that you start to, normal living start to interfere with this communication with the original donor.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's what Elena was talking about when they have such problems with them.
And I suggest next week's movie, The Firm, with Tom Cruise, talks about infiltrating or becoming part of a system. He becomes a lawyer in this law firm. He's part of basically the mob, but he doesn't know that. It kind of relates to Devil's Advocate, how he's gets involved in a situation, business, and then things just kind of turn. He starts seeing through it and sees what's really going on. So what's he going to do? And then you become creative in a situation like that. So in The Firm, he gets to a certain point, Tom Cruise, where he has to make a decision here if he's going to go with it or do something. Of course, it's too late for him to turn around, or else he'll get they always use something to blackmail people, so they always set people up, these politicians and people in positions of power. They always do this. They always get something on them so they can use it later on. So they have something on them, but he turns it around in a very creative way. So that's kind of what you have to do here. Either getting into these organizations, getting out, getting in and sharing what we're doing, and getting out. Well, without being offed or hurt. It's a real challenge here, because the whole system, the whole matrix is basically that, it's control. It's controlled. Creation is controlled. We're watched. So very challenging. But the clones, the real awareness, the more the clone or the original has a relationship with the real awareness, the more options and opportunities there is. You're not locked in as much, so you can do more to finagle your way into certain experiences or more recognition, which basically we're here for, to recognize what's going on in our real awareness. But that relationship, Doug he had to face his selves, like you said, Peter, before. All these clones were his self, so he was facing himself in a way. You could see it that way, and then he had to deal with it. And that's what we all have to do: face ourselves and face what we've set up for ourselves, and then get through it. Have some fun in the meantime, but we can get through it, and it's an ongoing process here. So The Firm, if you want to do The Firm, that's a real good one. It's like 2 hours, 34 minutes. It's a real good, solid movie. It's really good, well done, to show how the kind of the system works once you get into it, what you can do to get out, or how to manage it. Thank you. Let's do the new you. And new you. Peter?
New you.
Ronald?
You.
Kevin?
New